The rain battered the windows of our small suburban house, a relentless drumbeat that seemed to echo the chaos in my heart. I was 7 months pregnant, my belly swollen with the life of our unborn daughter. And yet, I stood frozen in the kitchen, the sting of Eric's words still ringing in my ears. "You're useless, Anna." He'd spat, his face contorted with a rage I'd grown to fear. "You can't even keep this house in order." His voice had been a blade, slicing through the fragile peace I'd tried to maintain for years. I was 32, a former real estate agent who'd given up her career to build a home with Eric, the man I thought I'd spend forever with. We'd met in college, where his charm and ambition had swept me off my feet. He was the golden boy tall, with a disarming smile and a knack for making everyone believe he was destined for greatness. I believed it too. But the man I married had changed. Or perhaps the mask had simply slipped. The late nights at the office, the unexplained expenses, the coldness that crept into his touch-it had all built up to this moment. That night, I'd been washing dishes, my hands trembling from exhaustion, when he stormed in, reeking of whiskey. I don't even remember what set him off. Maybe the sink was too full, or maybe I'd forgotten to iron his favorite shirt. It didn't matter. His temper was a storm, unpredictable and destructive. I tried to explain, my voice soft, placating, but he wasn't listening. He never listened anymore. Then it happened. His foot connected with my side, a sharp, deliberate kick that sent me stumbling against the counter. Pain exploded through my ribs, but it was the shock that stole my breath. My hands flew to my belly, cradling the life inside me, terrified she'd been hurt. "Eric," I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "I'm pregnant." He froze, his eyes wide with something regret, maybe, or just fear of what he'd done. But he didn't apologize. He never did. Instead, he muttered something about me pushing him too far and stormed out, leaving me crumpled on the floor, the rain outside mirroring the flood of my tears. I stayed there for what felt like hours, my mind racing. This wasn't the first time he'd lashed out, but it was the worst. The image of his foot striking me, the man who'd vowed to protect me, burned into my soul. I thought of my daughter, the tiny heartbeat I'd felt at every ultrasound, and I knew I couldn't stay. Not for me, not for her. But leaving wasn't simple. Eric controlled everything: our bank accounts, our properties, our lives. He'd made sure of that, always reminding me that I was nothing without him. Yet, in that moment, something shifted. The pain in my side was a clarion call, waking a part of me I'd buried long ago. I wasn't just Anna, the broken wife. I was Anna, the woman who'd once negotiated million-dollar deals, who'd built a career on wit and grit. I was Anna, the mother who would protect her child at all costs. And I would not let Eric destroy us. The next morning, as he slept off his hangover, I began to plan. I moved quietly, gathering documents from his office deeds, bank statements, anything I could find. I'd learned enough about real estate to know that ownership wasn't just about whose name was on the title. It was about leverage. And Eric, in his arrogance, had left plenty of cracks in his empire. He'd put properties in my name to dodge taxes, assuming I'd never have the nerve to challenge him. He was wrong. I called my old friend, Sarah, a lawyer who specialized in family law. Her voice was steady, a lifeline in the storm. "Anna, you need to document everything," she said. "Every bruise, every threat, and we need to move fast." I hesitated, shame creeping in. Telling someone else meant admitting how far I'd fallen. But Sarah's words were firm. "You're not alone. We'll get you out." Over the next week, I became a shadow in my own home, collecting evidence while Eric went about his life, oblivious. I photographed the bruise blooming across my ribs, a sickly purple stain that made me wince every time I moved. I recorded his late-night rants, his voice slurring as he berated me for imagined failures. And I studied the property's 3 houses, 2 commercial buildings, all tied to our marriage but legally mine. Eric had been careless, and I would use that against him. By the end of the week, I had a plan. It wasn't just about leaving. It was about taking back what was mine. I wouldn't just walk away from Eric. I would dismantle his world, brick by brick, just as he'd tried to dismantle me. For my daughter, for myself, I would fight, and I would win. The days that followed were a blur of secrecy and resolve. I moved through the house like a ghost, careful not to rouse Eric's suspicion. He'd return to his routine, charming at work, cold at home, unaware that I was weaving a web around him. My hands shook as I sorted through years of financial records, piecing together the puzzle of our shared assets. Each document I found was a weapon, a step toward freedom. Sarah was my anchor. We met in secret at a coffee shop across town, where I handed her a folder stuffed with copies of deeds and bank statements. Her eyes widened as she flipped through them. "Anna, this is significant," she said, her voice low. "He's been sloppy. These properties are in your name, and he's leveraged them to the hilt. If we play this right, you can walk away with everything." "Everything?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The idea felt too big, too impossible. But Sarah's nod was firm. "You're not just a victim, Anna. You're a survivor. And survivors don't just escape, they reclaim." Her words ignited something fierce in me. I thought of my daughter, the life growing inside me, and the future I wanted for her. Not one of fear, but of strength. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for her to know a world where she could stand tall, unbroken by anyone. Back home, I began to act. I contacted a real estate agent I'd worked with years ago, a woman named Clara who'd always admired my tenacity. Over a discreet phone call, I explained my situation, not the details. But enough. "I need to sell some properties," I told her, quietly and fast. Clara didn't hesitate. "I've got buyers lined up for quick sales," she said. "Just tell me what you need." The first property was a rental house in the suburbs, one Eric had bought as an investment but barely maintained. I listed it through Clara, using my legal ownership to bypass Eric's approval. The sale went through in days. The money deposited into a new account Sarah helped me set up Eric didn't know about. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. For the first time in years, I had control. Eric noticed nothing. He was too consumed with his own world, late nights at bars, meetings with clients, and whatever else he did when he thought I wasn't watching. But I was watching. I saw the receipts he left crumpled in his pockets, the phone calls he took in hushed tones. I didn't know if there was another woman, but I didn't care. His betrayal ran deeper than infidelity. He'd betrayed the vows we made, the trust I'd given him, the life we'd planned together. One night, as he slept, I slipped into his office and accessed his laptop. He'd never changed his password, another sign of his arrogance. I found emails from his business partners, vague references to deals that didn't add up. Eric was borrowing against our properties, sinking us into debt to fund his lifestyle. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Not just at him, but at myself for staying so long, for believing his lies. I started to feel the weight of my pregnancy more acutely, the physical toll of stress and sleepless nights. My doctor warned me to rest, but rest was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every moment was a race against time, a chance to secure my daughter's future before Eric realized what I was doing. I visited the doctor alone, clutching the ultrasound images like talismans. My daughter was healthy, thriving despite the chaos around her. She was my reason to keep going. Sarah and I met again, this time at her office. She laid out a legal strategy: divorce papers, a restraining order, and a plan to transfer the remaining properties into my sole control. He's going to fight this, she warned. Men like Eric don't let go easily. I nodded, my jaw tight. I was ready for a fight. I'd been fighting all my life, even if I hadn't realized it until now. By the end of the month, I'd sold another property, a commercial building that fetched a price far higher than I'd expected. The money went into my account, growing my war chest. I felt a flicker of pride, the kind I hadn't felt since my days in real estate. I was good at this. I was taking back my power, one transaction at a time. But Eric was starting to notice. He came home one night. His eyes narrowed. "Where's the paperwork for the rental house?" he demanded. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "I don't know. Eric, you handle all that." He stared at me, searching for a crack in my facade. I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes, and I knew I was winning. Eric's suspicion grew like a shadow, darkening every interaction. He started checking the accounts, asking questions about bills and expenses. I played dumb, deflecting with vague answers while my heart raced. Every lie was a risk, but every lie brought me closer to freedom. I couldn't afford to falter now. Sarah had warned me that Eric would fight dirty, and she was right. One evening, he cornered me in the living room, his voice low and menacing. "What are you up to, Anna?" he asked, his eyes glinting with paranoia. "You think I don't see you sneaking around?" I clutched the armrest of the couch, my belly heavy with my daughter's weight, and forced a smile. "I'm just trying to keep things together, Eric. For us." The words tasted like ash, but they bought me time. I was selling the third property now, a vacation home we rarely used. Clara worked her magic, finding a buyer willing to pay cash. The sale closed in a week, and the funds joined the others in my secret account. I was careful, using a burner phone to communicate with Clara and Sarah, keeping my plans hidden. But the stress was wearing me down. My body ached. My sleep was plagued by nightmares, and I lived in constant fear that Eric would discover my plan before I could finish. Sarah filed the divorce papers in secret, ensuring they wouldn't be served until I was ready. She also prepared a restraining order, citing the bruise on my ribs and the recordings I'd made. "This will protect you when the time comes," she said. "But you need to be ready to leave the moment those papers hit his hands." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just leaving Eric. I was building a new life, one where my daughter would never know the fear I'd lived with. I started packing a small bag, hiding it in the back of my closet. Clothes, toiletries, a few keepsakes from my mother, small things that anchored me to who I was before Eric. I also gathered my daughter's things, tiny clothes I'd bought in secret, a stuffed rabbit I'd found at a thrift store. Each item was a promise to her, a vow that she'd grow up safe and loved. One night, as I sorted through more documents, I found something that stopped me cold: a letter from a creditor, demanding payment for a loan Eric had taken out against our primary home. He'd forged my signature, a betrayal that cut deeper than the kick. The house was at risk, and with it, the last piece of stability I had. Panic surged, but I forced it down. This wasn't the end, it was another opportunity. If I could secure the house before Eric defaulted, I could keep it for myself and my daughter. I called Sarah immediately. "Can we stop him from selling the house?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "We can try. If we prove fraud, you might be able to claim it outright." It was a long shot, but I was desperate. I sent her the letter, along with proof that my signature had been forged. Sarah worked fast, filing an injunction to freeze the property's status until the divorce was settled. Meanwhile, Eric's behavior grew erratic. He started coming home earlier, watching me with a predator's focus. I could feel the clock ticking, the walls closing in. I needed to act before he did. Clara sold the fourth property, a small office building, and the money gave me the final push I needed. My account was now substantial enough to start over, to give my daughter a future. I began to dream of that future. A small house, maybe by the coast, where I could raise my daughter in peace. I'd go back to work, rebuild my career, show her what a strong woman looked like. But those dreams were tempered by fear. Eric wasn't stupid. He'd figure it out soon. And when he did, his rage would be unstoppable. One afternoon, as I was leaving the doctor's office, I saw him, Eric, sitting in his car across the street. His eyes locked on me. My blood ran cold. He wasn't supposed to be there. I forced myself to walk calmly to my car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. He didn't follow. But the message was clear. He was watching. That night, I made my decision. I couldn't wait any longer. I called Sarah and told her to serve the papers. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I looked down at my belly, feeling my daughter's gentle kicks, and said, "I'm sure." The tide was turning, and I was ready to ride it. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there to see Eric's reaction, but Sarah called me an hour later, her voice tense. "He's furious, Anna. He called my office, screaming about how you've betrayed him. Be careful." I was already on my way to a hotel, my packed bag in the trunk of my car. I'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Simple and final. "I'm done. Eric, don't look for me." The hotel room was small but clean, a temporary refuge. I sat on the bed, my hands resting on my belly, and let myself breathe for the first time in weeks. My daughter kicked, a reminder that I wasn't alone. But the relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a text from Eric. "You think you can take everything from me? You'll regret this." I blocked his number, my hands trembling, and called Sarah. "He's threatening me," I said. She was calm but firm. "The restraining order is in place. If he comes near you, call the police." I spent the next few days in a haze of fear and determination. Sarah worked tirelessly, pushing the divorce through the courts while I finalized the sale of the last property, a second commercial building. The money was enough to secure my future. But the house, our primary home, was still in limbo. The injunction had stalled Eric's attempt to sell it. But he was fighting back, claiming I'd stolen from him. His lies were desperate, but they were dangerous. Clara called with good news. A buyer had offered above asking price for the house, contingent on a quick sale. "If you can get it out of the injunction, it's yours to sell," she said. I relayed this to Sarah, who was optimistic. "We've got the forged loan documents," she said. "The court will see through his lies." But Eric wasn't giving up. He hired a lawyer, a slick man who sent threatening letters demanding I return his properties. I refused to back down. One night, as I lay awake in the hotel, I heard a knock at the door. My heart stopped. I crept to the peephole, expecting to see Eric's face. But it was just a delivery man with a Packagia baby blanket I'd ordered online. I laughed, a shaky, relieved sound. But the fear lingered. I was so close to freedom. But Eric's shadow loomed large. Sarah called the next day with a breakthrough. The court had ruled in my favor on the house, declaring Eric's loan fraudulent. I could sell it, keep the proceeds, and walk away. I cried, not from sadness, but from the weight of victory. Clara moved quickly, and within days, the house was sold. The money was wired to my account, a fortune that represented my daughter's future. But Eric wasn't done. He showed up at Sarah's office, shouting about how I'd ruined him. The police were called. and he was escorted out, his face red with rage. Sarah warned me to stay vigilant. He's broke now. Anna. Men like him get desperate when they have nothing left. I knew she was right. But I also knew I'd taken everything he valued: his wealth, his control, his pride. He was the one who'd lost. I moved to a small apartment, a temporary home until I could find something permanent. I decorated it with the few things I'd brought: the stuffed rabbit for my daughter, a photo of my mother, a notebook where I wrote my dreams for the future. I was still afraid, but I was free. And freedom, I was learning, was worth every risk. As my due date approached, I felt a strange peace settle over me. The bruises had faded, but the scars on my heart would take longer. I didn't care about revenge anymore. I cared about building a life where my daughter could thrive. I started taking online courses, brushing up on my real estate skills. I wanted to be the woman I'd once been, but stronger, wiser, unbroken. Eric sent one last message through his lawyer, a pathetic plea for reconciliation. I didn't respond. He'd made his choices, and I'd made mine. I was done being his victim. I was Anna, the mother, the survivor, the woman who'd taken back her life. The first contraction came in the middle of the night, a sharp pull that woke me from a restless sleep. I was alone in my apartment, the city quiet outside my window. I breathed through the pain, counting the seconds, and called Sarah. "It's time," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. She was at my side within the hour, driving me to the hospital, her hand warm in mine. The labor was long, grueling, but every pain was a step toward meeting my daughter. When she finally arrived, her tiny cry filled the room, and I wept. She was perfect 6 pounds, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the world. I named her Lily, after my mother, a name that meant purity and strength. Holding her, I felt a love so fierce it drowned out the echoes of Eric's cruelty. Sarah stayed with me, her presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. She'd become more than a lawyer. She was family. "You did it, Anna," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You're free, and she's safe." I nodded, unable to speak. Lily was my victory, my reason, my everything. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. I moved into a small house by the coast, bought with the money from the property sales. It was modest but bright, with a garden where I imagined Lily playing one day. I furnished it slowly, each piece a choice I made for myself. No more compromising, no more pleasing someone else. This was my home, our home. I went back to work, taking on small real estate deals while Lily slept in a bassinet nearby. Clara became my partner, and together we started a small agency, focusing on helping women like Medhos starting over, rebuilding their lives. Every sale felt like a triumph, a reminder that I was capable, that I was enough. Eric faded into the background. I heard through mutual friends that he'd lost his job, his reputation in tatters after the divorce. Part of me felt a flicker of pity, but it was fleeting. He'd made his choices, and I'd made mine. I didn't need his apologies or his regret. I had Lily, my work, my life. One evening, as I rocked Lily to sleep, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, scared, broken, trapped. I barely recognized her now. The scars were still there, but they were part of a story I was proud to tell. I'd faced the worst and come out stronger. I'd taken everything Eric thought he owned and built a future for my daughter. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Not for anyone else, but for me. I wrote about the pain, the fear, the triumph. I wrote about the moment I decided to fight, the moment I chose myself. One day, I'd share that story with Lily, so she'd know what it meant to be resilient, to rise from the ashes of a life that tried to break you. The sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I held Lily close. Her tiny hand curled around my finger, and I whispered, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in years, I believed it. A year later, I stood in the garden of my coastal home, watching Lily take her first wobbly steps. She giggled, her tiny hands reaching for the flowers I'd planted, her face alight with wonder. I laughed, a sound that felt like freedom, and scooped her up, spinning her in the sunlight. This was the life I'd fought for, the life I'd built from the ruins of my past. My real estate agency was thriving. Clara and I had expanded, hiring 2 more agents, both women who'd escaped their own storms. We specialized in helping clients who needed more than a house. They needed a fresh start. Every deal we closed was a reminder of my own journey, a testament to what was possible when you refused to give up. I never heard from Eric again. Rumors reached me he'd moved to another state, chasing some new scheme that would likely fail. I didn't care. He was a chapter I'd closed, a shadow that no longer darkened my days. My focus was on Lily, on our home, on the woman I was becoming. I kept writing, my words finding their way into a blog that gained a small but loyal following. Women reached out, sharing their own stories of survival, of reclaiming their lives. I answered every message, offering the encouragement I'd once needed. "You are enough," I wrote. "You are stronger than you know." It wasn't just advice. It was my truth. One day, Sarah came to visit, bringing a bottle of wine and a smile. We sat in the garden, watching Lily play, and she raised her glass. "To you, Anna," she said. "To the woman who took everything and built something better." I clinked my glass against hers, my heart full. "To Lily," I said, "and to every woman who's still fighting." As the years passed, I watched Lily grow fierce, curious, unafraid. She loved the ocean, the garden, the stories I told her about her grandmother, about the women who'd shaped me. I didn't tell her about Eric. Not yet. That story would come when she was older, when she could understand the cost of courage, the value of standing up. I never remarried. Not because I didn't believe in love, but because I'd learned to love myself first. I was whole, not because of a man, but because of the choices I'd made, the battles I'd won. My life was mine, and it was enough. The sun set again, as it did every evening, casting a warm glow over the garden. Lily ran to me, her arms outstretched, and I held her close, my heart swelling with a love that no one could take away. I'd been kicked, broken, betrayed, but I'd risen. I'd taken everything Eric thought he owned and built a legacy of strength. For me, for Lily, for every woman who dared to fight. And in that moment, under the endless sky, I knew we were more than okay. We were unstoppable,